This is Rob Tebbutt for Boxing Social in association with Betfred. Delighted as always to be joined by Frank Warren. We're still here in lockdown. It's week number 355 or something like that. How are you keeping, Frank?
It's Groundhog Week. It's killing me. Yeah, it's how am I feeling? I'm same as everybody else, very frustrated, and we all want to be doing something, don't we? And unfortunately, our sport is all about dates. If you haven't got a date to work towards, then nothing goes on. You know, fighters can't train. They haven't got anything to train, any dates to train for to achieve peak fitness levels, and we just can't do anything. So we're like the majority of the country at the moment, very frustrated and unable to work.
I think it's been about probably 6 weeks since I spoke to you last. Has there been any developments or any changes on your end?
No, I mean, what we've been working on is obviously when boxing does come back, that we can hit the ground running. So we've been doing a lot of research and having a lot of calls with various people, especially the Boxing Board of Controls, because it looks like when it does come back, it will be behind closed doors to start with. So we've got, at the moment, lined up a number of fights that as soon as this can be safely done, it's not going to be a burden on the NHS or any of the other services, that we can get up and moving and give the public some entertainment and, importantly, give the boxers some work and some income.
The last time I spoke to you, we spoke about Dubois Joyce, and you said that you didn't want that fight or you couldn't have that fight behind closed doors. Is that still the way that you look at that?
Yeah, I do feel any big fights. I think they need that environment. They need the fans there. At the moment, we don't know what's going to happen. There's going to be a statement. I think it's on Thursday, isn't it, by Boris Johnson? So we'll see what happens. Hopefully, they give us some guidelines as to what we can be doing. So, you know, our intentions, if we are doing anything behind closed doors, is that we'll start off with. I don't mean being disrespectful, like small shows, but probably British title, Intercontinental, maybe even Europeans if we're lucky. It's a lot of logistics that you've got to deal with to get shows on. I mean, for example, if you bring in foreign opponents in, we're going to have to isolate them for 14 days. And obviously, the most important thing is to whoever's involved in the promotion, whether they're boxers, they're trainers, referees, everybody who's in there, cutmen, cornermen, they're all going to have to be tested regularly. So we think there's going to be a minimum of at least 2 tests per week to ensure that it's safe for the guys to fight and for everybody else to be involved in it. And we'll be talking about putting fighters actually maybe into isolation for a period of time before the fight. So we're going to be very safe. That's the most important thing about this, and the most paramount thing is that we do have that we make sure that everybody is protected as best as possible.
With you making a good point there about kind of having foreign opponents coming in and having to quarantine them, could this lead to more work for kind of your British journeymen, your Lewis Van Pooches, your people like that?
Well, I mean, look, obviously, it makes more sense for us to make more British fights than we can. And being realistic about this, when it does come back, people are not going to be queuing up to put on shows. I mean, contrary to what some people seem to think is going to happen, that won't happen. You're in a position where, if it is behind closed doors, that obviously means there's no revenue generated from the paying public, which is a big blow. So therefore, you're going to rely on TV revenue. And there's only 2 promoters who've got any TV. MTK do their golden contract stuff. So it's Matchroom, MTK, and ourselves will be the promoters. We'll be the only ones promoting any shows. So, with their golden contract shows. So that will be it. I don't see anybody unless they want to lose lots and lots of money putting any shows on until that ban's lifted. So it's going to be, it's not going to be a strain on the resources of the Boxing Board of Control or referees and doctors and so forth. We'll ease back into it and then see how it goes, and hopefully it will go as best as you can. But none of us and nobody wants to do shows behind closed doors. It's the last thing we want to do, but it's probably going to be the only thing we can do to start with, and that's how it'll be. And we've got to ensure that, if football is doing it and rugby and other sports are doing it, and we're there, we've got to be relevant. We've got to be on the box. We've got to be delivering our products into people's homes. They've got to, there's a lot of boxing fans out there. It's probably the second most popular sport in the country. So we've got to make sure it stays there and people see it. There's been no money made from a financial aspect. There's no money to be made in this at all. This is going to be hopefully a breaking even scenario. Because besides losing the fans, you've got to think of the cost of what we've got to put in order to make these events work. The cost of the testing that we're going to have to do for the fighters, the cost of the isolation, putting them in hotels, whereas you only have boxers coming in to the country, but maybe be in the hotel for, as I mentioned earlier, say for 4 or 5 days. They're going to be in a hotel for 2 weeks, and their costs, and it's their food and everything else that surrounds that. So we've got to be careful in what we're doing, but we've got to make sure that we are there. We've got to make sure that boxing is still a big British sport that we can get out there to the public.
You mentioned about Dubois, Joyce, and obviously we've spoken about it several weeks ago about not wanting to take that behind closed doors. In the last 24 hours or so, we've heard news that Dillian Whyte versus Alexander Povetkin, which was a pay-per-view heavyweight fight, is going to happen behind closed doors. Is that something that you could kind of look at with Dubois, Joyce, as you go forward, or you just really don't want to put that?
At this stage, I wouldn't even consider it. Wouldn't even consider it at this stage. It needs to be in front of the public. That's how we see it. Again, contrary to what was said by a couple of people doing their podcast, that fight at the O2 was nigh on sold out. We only had, very, very few tickets left, and even whilst it's been postponed until July, fingers crossed, we've only had roughly 10% of people asking for refunds up to as yet. And I'm sure if it does go ahead on that date, they'll come back in and buy it. So, one, it's the revenue, what we've got to pay the fighters. And two, it's very important, as I say, that fighters, real big fights feed off of atmosphere. The crowd there, the electric buzz in the air and so forth. And so our challenge as promoters is going to be how you're going to translate that into a studio setting. If you're doing show, which we'll be doing shows in the studio, we've got to get that atmosphere going. Now we're lucky. We've actually done Total Combat we did that in BT studio behind in there, and that came across really well the way it was filmed and so forth. So we do have an experience of doing that. If it's in a studio, it may not be in a studio. It may be in a small venue that we take over. So our objective is to get these on. And to start with, at the level we've just said, and I think the Boxing Board of Control will talk about starting shows at a certain level, but we'll start at that level and see how it pans out. We're aiming to do a minimum of 1 show per week, so that's where we're at.
I've spoken to several people, but several promoters recently, Calla Sowland, Eddie Hearn, etc. They've all said that due to kind of a backlog or a potential backlog when we come back, the need for, or certainly the appeal for having tune-up fights, so to speak, is going to go. And you're going to have the situation where fighters are going to be forced to take fights that they wouldn't necessarily have planned on taking before the coronavirus lockdown. Do you agree with that? And if so, why?
I don't know. I think each fighter's it's a different scenario. It depends what level they're at in their careers. I think, you look at each level and then we make our decision how we're actually going to deal with that. But as I see it at the moment, the problem you're going to have is you're not be able to give everybody fights. That's a fact. I mean, you're only going to, on these shows, you're not going to have more than 5 fights per show. That's what the board is saying at the moment. And that really is how it will be, because you can't have that amount of people close together. So it's going to have to be strictly controlled. So you're only talking about 10 fighters per week getting a fight on our shows. That's how it's going to be. So we've got to make sure that we service all our contracts for our fighters as best we can, and make sure everybody's sensible. And as I say, we'll deal with each boxer individually, because that's what they are. They're individuals. But we obviously, you're not going to get a long run of tune-up fights. That's just not going to happen.
Also, potentially throws up the opportunity for cross-promotional fights, potentially. Strange bedfellows and what have you, working together in interesting times. What do you think of that, Frank?
Well, no, it may happen. Again, it's to see what it throws up. But at the moment, we've got to give our own fighters work. And we've got enough fighters in the different weight divisions that can fight each other, which we've been doing, as you know, for a long while. We've been putting our guys against each other. So there's some good fights there that we can put on from within our promotion, from guys who are under our promotional umbrella.
Okay, well, before we move on and talk about a few other little bits and pieces, Frank, you do have a couple of new signings this week. Nice to see in this uncertain time. Fighters being signed to promotional companies. Nathan Heaney, young man at Stoke, has got himself quite a following. Talk to us a little bit about bringing him into the fold, Frank.
Well, as you say, he's got a following. He's exciting. He's got a tremendous following. He's a bit like a youngish Ricky Hatton situation. Problem is, we can't sell him any tickets at the moment. It's sod's law. He's a lovely lad. I spoke to him the other day, and I'm looking forward to working with him. It's exciting. It's an exciting fighter, as you say. Once hopefully we can get the live audiences back, we're going to have some fun up in this area. Stoke and around that area. I'm quite sure we'll have some packed out shows.
It doesn't really strike me as a hotbed of boxing over the years. I can't think of too many shows that have been to Stoke, Frank.
Nor can I. I used to do, because I can say these things, years ago, we used to do a lot of shows up there. We used to run a series called Fight Night on ITV. And we used to use, that's called the Central TV area, and we used to do quite a few shows in and around that area. But what I'm looking forward to try and see if we can do is to somehow deliver him a world title fight at Stoke City's ground, which would be fabulous. You can imagine what the turnout would be there for that.
That's some very lofty early expectations, Frank.
Well, that's what we've got to work out. I mean, look, at the end of the day, I'm ambitious. He's ambitious. I'm ambitious. And the name of the game is to try and make these things happen. That's the job. That's our job as promoters, to make them happen. So that's what what I'll try to do and try to deliver to.
And just finally, as I mentioned, you had a couple of signings. Echo Esserman has also joined the Queensbury stable. Just tell us a little bit about him, Frank.
Yeah, he's got a good record. I mean, it's not like he's not a youngster. Like starting out afresh. He's got a good winning record, and I'm looking forward to him being part of the team, and I'm looking forward to him being in some exciting fights. It's a very exciting weight division.
Just need some fights to be able to put on first, but yeah.
Exactly.